Board Games follows the entrepreneur Marcus Dreer and his determination to accomplish his goals by any means necessary, even if it plummets him down a deadly hole of no return. For all of my book lovers out there, Board Games is a simmering drama that boils into a gripping conclusion, and you can find Board Games 1 and 2 now on Amazon, and is written by yours truly, so you won't be disappointed. You are now tuned into the SoCHiology podcast. SoCHiology is a lifestyle brand emphasizing Chicago culture, experiences, and stories, and connected topics abroad. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, from the hearts and minds of Chicagoans themselves. This is SoCHiology episode 45, the first episode of the new year, 2022. Welcome back. This is another edition of Twiz Theater. I don't know if this is the third or the fourth edition, but nonetheless, Twiz Theater, I'm back again with it. If you remember the very first episode of SoCHiology, like if you go way back to episode 1, we talked about Siberia, which is basically another word for winter in Chicago, and how bad and brutal it can be, right? This episode, we're going to kind of revisit that because the snow was a little late. We didn't have a white Christmas last month, December 2021. We didn't have a white Christmas, but the snow arrived on New Year's Day 2022, and it reminded us quickly who the fuck it was. Depending on where you live in the city, you got 4 to 8 inches of snow, and it's stuck, and we instantly got reminded what winter in Chicago is like and can be like. And with the snow comes Dibs for the crib. Now, if you live in the suburbs, you ain't gonna know too much about Dibs. Yeah, you heard of it, but you ain't gonna know too much about Dibs and why it's a custom in Chicago, because the reality is, in the suburbs, you always got somewhere to park. You can park in your driveway, you can park on the street because there's no paid parking in the suburbs, really, or you can park in the parking lot at your apartment building, right? There's always going to be a place to park in the suburbs. But in the city, that's not really the case. First of all, parking is scarce in the city anyway. Whether it's summer, fall, spring, it don't really matter. In Hyde Park on the south side, you got to drive around. Residents talked about how they got to drive around their apartment or house multiple times just to find a parking spot, just to get lucky. Anywhere up north, anywhere north of the Loop is basically hell finding a parking spot. Ravenswood, Logan Square, Ricker Park, Rogers Park, all of that. It's hard to find parking in the city of Chicago anyway. So imagine what it's like when it's snowing outside, when you gotta dig your car out of snow. Imagine what that's like. So that's what Dibs is about, and that's why Dibs is really a custom in Chicago. So if you live in the burbs, you ain't really gonna understand it fully. Now, I said it on this podcast before many times, I'm from Markham, which is a suburb of Chicago, south suburb to be exact. But I spent a lot of time in the city at relatives' house, mainly my grandma down on the low end in Bronzeville. Now, my first experience with Dibs came as a child. I had to be 8, 9, 10 years old. I don't know how old I was at the time. But I was at my grandma's house, and my uncle asked me if I wanted to walk to the store with him just to get some fresh air. I'm like, sure, yeah, it's sunny outside. It's still winter. It's still snow everywhere, but it's sunny outside. Let's go for a walk. I'm thinking we going to the grocery store. Nah, we went to the liquor store. Powoods, right there on 35th. If you ever around 35th in Indiana, you will see Powoods. It's still there. So anyway, we walk into the liquor store so my uncle can get his pint of Dimitri vodka. And as we're walking, I see 2 dudes arguing, and they loud as hell. You know what I'm saying? They finna throw punches at each other. They loud as hell. And I couldn't understand what was going on, but all I remember distinctly is I heard one of the guys saying, "This my spot, nigga. This my spot, nigga. You saw my stool right there." And I didn't understand why they was finna fight over a fucking stool. Like, why are they fighting over this little wooden raggedy stool? I didn't get it as a child. But as an adult that does live within the city limits of Chicago, I fully understand now why they was arguing and why they was finna come to blows. I get it now. Let's go back to 1967. 1967 is considered the worst blizzard in Chicago history because it was the largest snowfall in Chicago history. 23 inches of snow hit the city in January 1967. And we can assume that's when Dibs really became a Chicago custom. That's when it really became interlaced in Chicago culture. That's what we can assume, right? Because in 1967, the Chicago Tribune said that motorists were staking out their domains with folding chairs, carpenter horses, and anything that may come to hand. That's what the Chicago Tribune said in 1967. That sounds like dibs, don't it? But the word dibs wasn't officially coined until 1999 by another Tribune columnist who said at the time you can even straight up call dibs on a spot you hadn't even shoveled out yet. Dibs has been so ingrained in Chicagoans' minds. It's been endorsed by Chicago mayors for decades. It's been endorsed by some Chicago aldermen. And guess what? Dibs isn't even legal. It's really an illegal practice, but it's kind of like one of those unwritten rules. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know what it is, so you don't mess around with it. And you leave it the fuck alone. I mean, think about it. If you got to go outside, dig your car out of inches of snow, feet of snow, in the frigid Chicago cold, wouldn't you want your parking spot back? Wouldn't you want that parking spot to be reserved for yourself? I mean, I would. I'm just keeping it real. I don't want nobody taking my motherfucking spot. I want my spot back. And if you see somebody that's always parking in front of their house, if they're always parking in the same spot on the block, it's kind of like, well, that's their spot. So why do I have to be an asshole and take their spot? This is the world that we live in here in Chicago. And it's kind of like, if you know, then you know. NPR did a study on the blizzards of 2011, 2015, and 2018 here in the city. And in that study, they found 64 cases of Dibs-related retaliation. Because if you take somebody's spot, it's going to be retaliation. You better believe that. You know what I'm saying? Of those cases, 51 of them dealt with slashed tires. 12 cases of broken windows. 11 cars with keys dented or scratched. 5 mirrors were broken. 2 cases of broken headlights. 1 damaged grill. 1 brake line severed. 1 bent antenna. And 1 car egged and floured. Now, if that don't tell you that dibs is a real thing here in Chicago, I don't know what will. I mean, if you taking somebody's spot, bruh, oh, you better believe it's going to be hell to pay. And that's just really how it is. It's not saying it's right. It's not saying it's wrong. That's just how it is. And you got to understand that people will use anything to claim dibs. I mean, think about it. I've seen entire desks with chairs. I've seen the typical folding chair. I've seen construction cones, crates, lamps, garbage cans, which is one of my personal go-tos. I've seen trash without garbage cans. People get real creative when it comes to dibs. Any object, furniture that you don't really care for too much can be designated as your Chicago winter dibs holder for your household. Now, I said that, I've used a garbage can before, mainly when it's garbage pickup day. But my dibs holder is an old lawn chair that I had years and years ago. It's still sturdy. I can still use it if I really wanted to use it, but it sinks a little too low for my liking, so these days I don't really use it that much. But the only reason I haven't thrown it out is because it has a job to do, and its job is to hold dibs for my crib. Dibs are taken very serious in Chicago, but why only in Chicago? Is dibs only used in Chicago? Absolutely not. People use them in other northern cities. It happens in Detroit. It happens in New York. It happens in Boston. But why is it so widespread and taken so serious in Chicago opposed to those other northern cities? The answer is simple. Chicagoans are just like everybody else, only more so. If you enjoyed this podcast, I ask for 2 things. Number 1, leave a 5-star review. And number 2, pass it on to a friend who may enjoy it as well. And don't forget to subscribe to our other podcast, Mogul Motivation from True Stories Media.